So Anthony Joshua is the newly crowned IBF heavyweight champion. I want to talk about a few things in this video. This is going to be the aftermath video. But before I get into that, I have to just address one or two people on my post-fight video who rocked up in the comment section accusing me of picking Martin to win the fight. I mean, I don't know what form of crack cocaine you're smoking, but I clearly picked Joshua to win this fight by knockout. I don't know what you're smoking telling me that I picked Charles Martin. You must be nuts. In fact, I'm sure I was the first YouTube channel to even cover Anthony Joshua. I was talking about Joshua way before he was in the Olympics, all right, on my old channel. So don't come to me talking about Joshua's the future. You pick Martin. You are a donut. Yeah. You don't know nothing about my channel. You don't even know who I picked, for God's sake. I picked Joshua by KO. Anyway, the aftermath of this fight. People straight away are saying Joshua's a paper champion. He didn't win the belt from Tyson Fury, this, that, and the other. Let me tell you something about the situation with Tyson Fury, because people have got it so twisted. Tyson Fury was not hard done by the IBF when they stripped him. That situation was of Tyson Fury's own making. Tyson Fury was the WBO mandatory challenger for Vladimir Klitschko. Okay, and as a mandatory challenger, you are never obligated to sign a contract which has a rematch clause when you're mandatory challenger. But for some bizarre reason, Tyson Fury decided to agree to have a rematch clause in his contract for that first fight against Vladimir Klitschko. That is the first time in 25 years, over 25 years of watching the sport of boxing. That is the first time I've ever come across a mandatory challenger forfeiting his right to just have a one-off fight and not have a rematch, and actually signing for a rematch. I've never seen that happen before in boxing in 25 years, but Tyson Fury did it. And because he did such an unusual thing, he put himself in a position after the fight where there was a conflict between his obligation to face his IBF mandatory and his obligation to fight Vladimir Klitschko in the rematch, because Vladimir exercised the rematch clause. Had Tyson Fury not done such an unusual thing and signed for the rematch, then he wouldn't have got stripped by the IBF. If he'd done what every other mandatory challenger does and not sign a rematch clause, then he wouldn't have got stripped. So the only party here who acted in an unusual fashion is the Tyson Fury party, not the IBF. The IBF did what they normally do. They enforce their mandatories very stringently. And I personally think it's a good thing for the most part. Yeah, you look at this individual case and you say, well, maybe the IBF could have used their discretion because obviously Tyson Fury beat a long reigning champion, and having Glasgow as the mandatory challenger, is it really worth stripping Fury to give the title to Glasgow? You know, you can say, all right, maybe they should have used their discretion. But if they use their discretion this time around, they're going to have to do the same thing for many, many other fighters. Loads of other fighters are going to be coming to them and saying, hey, look, I could have fought such and such a fighter who's much more credible, but you forced me to fight this mandatory who nobody's heard of. A good example would be Kell Brook. He just fought Kevin Bizier. He wanted to reschedule his fight against Diego Chavez, who was a much more credible opponent, but the IBF insisted that he face his mandatory. The IBF, out of all the sanctioning bodies, are the most stringent and the most strict when it comes to champions facing their mandatory. And if you want to look at the, and I say for the most part, that's a good thing. Okay. If you want to look at the flip side of that and understand why not being as strict as the IBF can be a bad thing on a lot of occasions, just take a look at Canelo. Look how lenient the WBC are being with Canelo. Canelo has Golovkin as his mandatory challenger, but yet they're not enforcing that. He was supposed to fight him in his next fight. The winner of Canelo versus Cotto was supposed to fight Golovkin next. But the WBC have used their discretion, if you want to call it that, and allowed Canelo to go and fight Amir Khan, a guy who's never fought a middleweight before. A guy who shouldn't even be ranked at middleweight. And they've allowed him to fight at a catchweight just like he won the title at a catchweight. That's what happens when sanctioning bodies don't enforce their mandatories. So the IBF are saying, you know what, we're not going to have one rule for one guy and a different rule for somebody else. We're just going to enforce strict mandatory obligations right the way across the board for all fighters. That's what they're doing. Is that not a good thing? And that's what they did with Tyson Fury. He's only got himself to blame. I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, and I do like Tyson Fury, but let's not get it confused here. There is certain people within the media and the boxing establishment who do want to make life difficult for Tyson Fury. But in this particular instance with the IBF, that's not the case. It's Tyson Fury who did something very unusual to sign for a rematch when he was mandatory challenger. Why do that? And as far as when the mandatory challenge against Glazkov was due, well, Tyson Fury just inherited Vladimir Klitschko's mandatory obligations. Had Vladimir Klitschko beat Tyson Fury, he would have had to sign to face Glazkov immediately after the fight. Because his mandatory was due. His IBF mandatory was due. So he would have had to sign it, agree it, and then fight Glazkov within a certain period of time. So again, all this stuff about Tyson Fury's hard done by and this, that, and the other, all nonsense. The history of the heavyweight division has been littered with fighters fighting for vacant belts. You go back and, look at Larry Holmes against Ken Norton. You look at the guys who fought for Ali's vacant belts when he went into exile. They didn't regard Joe Frazier as the legitimate champion, a lot of people, in the heavyweight division in the 70s until he beat Muhammad Ali. So it is what it is. Lennox Lewis got his first world title from the trash can, the rubbish bin. He had to pick it out because Riddick Bowe vacated it. Threw it away. So this is normal in the heavyweight division. Vitaly Klitschko, he got his WBC title not by beating Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis beat him. He fought for a vacant belt. So people fighting for vacant belts is nothing new, it's nothing unusual, and it doesn't mean a guy is not necessarily good or a guy's a fraud or this, that, and the other just because he fights for a vacant belt. Let's just get that straight. This whole situation with the IBF was of Tyson Fury's own making. Don't sign these bizarre rematch clauses when you're mandatory challenger. Why do that? It seems totally insane to me. People say, oh, well, maybe Klitschko offered him a larger percentage of the money if he agreed to a rematch. Maybe he did. But still, in 25 years of watching boxing, I've never known a mandatory challenger other than Tyson Fury to do that. So whatever Klitschko offered him, it's still an extremely unusual thing for Tyson Fury to do. Now, moving on from the whole Fury situation, because that's what people are banging on about at the moment. Who can Anthony Joshua beat in the heavyweight division? Who can he beat in the top 10? I think he's got tremendous potential. I've been saying this ever since he was an amateur, not just because of his physical attributes, but also because of his mental attitude. I've always been impressed since he was an amateur with his mental attitude. In terms of his self-confidence, his self-belief, he's obviously extremely dedicated. Now, my position on his choice of trainer hasn't changed. I still think he would be better off with somebody else, but he's such a talented athlete and he's such a student of the game that even with a guy like Tony Sims, he's obviously able to go a certain way. When you've got that type of talent, you can go a certain way. You don't necessarily have to have the best trainer in the world. But to take him to the next level, I believe he will need to change his trainer at some point. I don't know who's going to fight in his next few fights. There's possibilities of David Haye. It was interesting. Eddie Hearn did an interview with IFL TV. And in the interview, he said that he doesn't regard Tyson Fury as a dangerous fight for Joshua. Interesting. And I know, you can take Eddie Hearn's views and opinions sometimes, or his comments with a pinch of salt, but I actually believe what Eddie Hearn said. I don't think he sees Tyson Fury as necessarily that dangerous. In fact, I think Eddie Hearn sees David Haye as more dangerous for Joshua than Tyson Fury, because of the fact that David Haye is a much more explosive puncher than Tyson Fury. I think when Eddie Hearn looks at Fury, he says, yeah, he's tricky, he's awkward, he's a big, tall guy, but I can't see him being a threat to AJ in terms of punching power. I think AJ's sharper than he is, stronger than he is, I don't think Fury might be a bit fiddly for AJ, but I'm not worried about AJ getting knocked out against Fury. I think that's what Eddie Hearn is genuinely thinking. But when he looks at David Haye, he's thinking, you know what? David Haye's an explosive puncher, very good throwing counters with the right hand, very, very powerful. If AJ makes a mistake, David Haye's the kind of guy who can capitalize with extremely hard shots much more effectively than Tyson Fury, who's not really a counterpuncher. Tyson Fury, he's not really a counterpuncher at all. He's more of a lead puncher. He likes to jab and move, throw shots here and there, but he's not a particularly sharp counterpuncher. And by the way, I'm not saying that David Haye beats Tyson Fury, not at all. I'm just telling you what I think Eddie Hearn is thinking. That's what I think Eddie Hearn's thought process is at this particular time. So, yeah, I think he's more likely, if Fury comes through the Klitschko rematch, I think we may be more likely to see the Fury-AJ fight before the Fury-David Haye fight, based on what Eddie Hearn said in that particular interview. Obviously, as I mentioned in my post-fight video, the Joseph Parker mandatory challenge will be early next year. If Parker manages to get past Carlos Takam, that's a very good fight. Other than that, who else is in there in the top 10? You've got the winner of Povetkin Wilder. We'll see. That's another very good fight. We'll see who wins that. That's a possibility for a unification with Joshua. But Eddie Hearn actually in the post-fight interview after the Martin fight said that he might actually get Joshua back in the ring on July 9th, which is the same date as the rematch between Tyson Fury and Vladimir Klitschko. So Eddie Hearn trying to ting, basically. Eddie Hearn trying to stick it to Box Nation and Tyson Fury by saying that he's going to put a Joshua fight on the same date. You would imagine that even though Vladimir Klitschko is a massive name in world boxing, and particularly in Europe, Vladimir Klitschko just does unbelievable viewing figures in Europe. Absolutely incredible. I think a lot of people don't even realize. For example, Vladimir Klitschko against David Haye did 500 million views worldwide. You did not hear me make a mistake. 500 million. For that fight in the Ukraine's only got a population of about, I think, 40 million, just over. In the Ukraine alone, they had 20 million views for Vladimir Klitschko against David Haye. Okay? He does absolutely phenomenal numbers, Vladimir. But for this fight here against Tyson Fury, the rematch, I think Vladimir's market value has diminished somewhat. And certainly in the UK, in terms of pay-per-view, I can't see Klitschko Fury 2 doing as well as Anthony Joshua against anybody if it takes place on the same night. I can't see it. Because the first fight between Fury and Klitschko was a stinker. It was boring. It was a great performance by Fury technically, but it was a stinker of a fight from a entertainment point of view. And the fans know that. The fans, people talk down and everything about casual boxing fans, but without casual boxing fans, these fighters wouldn't be able to earn the type of money that they earn. It's the casuals. It's not the hardcores like us who make these fighters rich. It's primarily the casuals that make these fighters rich. Yeah, let's not get it confused, because there are far more casual boxing fans than hardcore fans. That's not to demean what we do as hardcore fans, because we do a lot to, talk about the fights and get people interested and all that type of stuff. But to take these fights and these fighters to the next level in terms of popularity and the type of money they can earn, you need the casual fan. You need the backing of them. So, I'm not really one to talk down and bash casual fans like a lot of people are. But yeah, the casual fan is interested, not just the casual fan, many hardcore fans are interested in knockouts and excitement, particularly when it comes to heavyweight boxing. And that's what Joshua provides. Tyson Fury, earlier in his career, he was providing that. But he's decided, you know what, I can't be getting knocked down. I need to use my height and reach and ability, and fair play to him for that. And that's what he's been doing in his past few fights, which haven't been particularly exciting, especially the Klitschko fight. So, this is not a situation where I'm bashing Fury and this, that, and the other. Not at all. Fury is the number one in the division at the moment. He beat the man who beat the man. So Fury absolutely, on paper, in terms of who he's beat, is the number one heavyweight in the division at this point in time. But from a marketability point of view, from an excitement point of view, Joshua is a hotter commodity at the moment. He's got the Sky platform as well. That helps. And people are just going to tune in to watch him more so than Tyson Fury against Vladimir Klitschko in the rematch. That's just my opinion. Anyway, moving on from that, who are other possible opponents for Joshua if Eddie Hearn wants a couple of easy defenses for Anthony Joshua? Because he's still learning. I mean, winning a world title in your 16th fight, even when it's against a relatively poor champion like Charles Martin. But don't get it twisted. There's always been poor champions in boxing. You know, you go back to the 70s. Jimmy Ellis wasn't a particularly good champion, people. He was one of the champions who came about after Muhammad Ali was in his exile, his 3.5 years exile for refusing to go to war in Vietnam. Jimmy Ellis, he wasn't particularly good. There was loads of poor champions during the 80s, during Larry Holmes's reign. Holmes had the IBF title and there were other guys who held the other belts who were not particularly good champions. Mike Tyson, when he won the world title against Trevor Berbick was a tough, strong guy, but definitely one of the weakest champions, heavyweight champions in history. Definitely. So this is nothing new. It's nothing unprecedented. There have always been weak champions in boxing. All right. So, given all that, Joshua winning the title in his 16th fight, he's still learning on the job. And actually, there was an interview that Joshua did with IFL TV in the past week where he basically said that because he has been thrust into the limelight from very early on in his boxing career, he hasn't been able to develop from a technical point of view as much as he would have been able to had he not been put in the limelight, because he says there's more pressure. So if he makes a mistake, if he tries out different things, if he experiments in the ring, he's worried about looking bad. So he doesn't do that. He tends to hold back and he's thinking, let me try to throw this punch now. Let me not throw it, because if I miss it and I get countered, people are going to say this, that, and that about me. So he himself admits that being in the bright lights from such an early stage in his career has hampered him to some degree from a technical point of view and not allowed him to try the things he wants to try in the ring. So it's a case of him having to learn on the job. David Haye and Woody Harrison, after the fight, after the Joshua Martin fight, was saying that he needs to be brought along as a champion and learn on the job, kind of like Deontay Wilder is. And there's more of a case for allowing Joshua to do that because of the fact that he's only 16 fights in. Wilder was, 30 odd fights before he fought for the title. And by the way, Berman Stavern, it appears, is much better than Charles Martin. So let's not get confused. Wilder definitely beat a better guy than Charles Martin to win the title. But since Wilder won the title, he hasn't been facing the top tier guys. Okay, I don't think the guys are as poor as people are trying to make out that Wilder's been facing. But he hasn't been facing the top tier guys. He's been learning on the job. And his first real test, his first serious test against a proven top level heavyweight will come very shortly against Alexander Povetkin. With Joshua, they're going to have to try and do a similar job, in my opinion, and in the opinion of David Haye, Harrison, and many other people. I think Carl Froch agreed with it. They're going to have to, give him a few decent level fighters, but nobody too crazy. Somebody that's maybe going to take him rounds. I think a Johan Duhaupas or Dupar, however you want to pronounce it, I think he would be a good first defense for Joshua. We know he's tough. We know he can go rounds. That would be an interesting one for Joshua if he's ranked highly enough, and I do think Dupar is ranked highly enough at this point in time. Marius Wack, if he's ranked highly enough, these are guys who can take Joshua rounds maybe. So you could possibly look at those guys. And as I already mentioned, maybe the winner of Pulev against Derek Chisora, particularly if it's Chisora, because Chisora's very marketable in the UK still. So, you put Chisora against Joshua on pay-per-view, it's definitely going to sell. I mean, Joshua against anybody's going to sell. He's just that big at this point in time. So, yeah, it's interesting days. As I said, and as I keep saying, we are moving into a golden era of heavyweight boxing. Forget about the fact Martin was a poor champion. There's always been poor champions. Even in the golden era of heavyweight boxing, there was poor champions, like people like Jimmy Ellis. So, yeah, now that Charles Martin's out the way, look who the champions are. We got Joshua. We got Tyson Fury, who's a very skilled fighter. We got the winner of Povetkin against Wilder is definitely going to be a legitimate champion. Whoever wins that fight is going to be classed as legitimate. Like, you know, Povetkin, Wilder. We got Luis Ortiz out there. So, yes, it's going to be a great era. We got, obviously, Lucas Brown. We don't know what his situation is at the moment. So we got exciting heavyweight fights on the horizon. We got Joseph Parker coming up. Loads of exciting heavyweight fights. Loads of talented heavyweights. I don't know what people are complaining about. Some people just want to complain for the sake of complaining. Trying to talk about this division ain't a golden era that's coming up. It's a bronze era. No, it ain't no bronze era. It's a golden era. Yeah? Golden era in terms of the quality of fights. The excitement is back. You can't judge how good these fighters are historically until it's all said and done. Until 10 years from now, when most of these guys are retired and have had all their big fights and their careers are done. Then you'll be able to look back and say, okay, let's judge them historically. You can't judge them now. You can't say, oh, these guys are crap compared to the heavyweights of the 90s or compared to the heavyweights of the 70s. You can't say that now. You might be able to say that about Charles Martin. We're not talking about Charles Martin. We're talking about Joshua. We're talking about Fury. We're talking about Wilder. We're talking about Parker. We're talking about Ortiz. Povetkin maybe. Even Hay might still be in the mix. We'll see what they can still do. That's who we're talking about when we're talking about a new golden era of heavyweight boxing. And that's exactly what it is. You can keep denying it all you want. The fact of the matter is I'm correct about this. Great times for the heavyweight division. The heavyweight division right now is the buzz division in boxing. It's the one that everybody's talking about for a reason. Because it's a new golden era. Keep telling you, man. So anyway, people, drop your comments below. Let me know who you would like to see Anthony Joshua fight. Who do you think would be a sensible first defense, a logical first defense, given the fact that he's very inexperienced. 16 fights in, I think he's like the 4th or 5th earliest heavyweight champion in history. And when I say earliest, I mean in terms of the number of fights he's had. Most heavyweight champions have had far more fights than Joshua by the time they pick up a title. And yes, I know Martin is not a great champion. But again, Lennox Lewis, when he was world champion, he picked his world title out of a rubbish bin. Mike Tyson, when he was world champion, he beat Trevor Berbick. Trevor Berbick is not a great champion, people. Let's stop acting as though Joshua's done something that all the other heavyweight champions in history didn't do. No. You know, Joshua beat a weak champion like many other of the great champions in history have also done. But he did it earlier in his 16th fight. So he has to get kudos and respect for that. And as I say, 16 fights, he's still a relative novice. You have to give him time. You have to allow him to learn on the job. But with the pressure of pay-per-view, will he get that type of time? I don't know. Anyway, let me stop musing on and on and on and let you guys comment. I'm sure some of you will take serious exception to some of the things I said in this video, but it's all good. As long as you keep it respectful, as long as you don't misquote me like that idiot who dropped a comment on my last video saying, you picked Martin to lose. What type of crack are you smoking, bruh? Goodness Lord, I picked Joshua to win. As I say, I was the first YouTube channel who started covering Anthony Joshua, the first of, YouTube commentary channels, YouTube boxing commentary. I was the first guy to even be talking about Joshua. What are you talking about? Acting like I was a big Joshua skeptic. Not at all. Yeah, I've been on this ride following Joshua's career for almost since the very beginning of his amateur days. So don't give me that nonsense. Anyway, yeah, let me know how you feel in the comment section below, people. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.